Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Legends of Zegan, the podcast where we deep dive into the lives of everyday extraordinary people who are doing big things in life. I'm your host Dave, and today we're going to do an episode on an epic icon. So the Epic Icon podcasts are going to be a special series dedicated to historical figures, more prominent people in the world, not just everyday people, but more important figures in history. And this particular episode I'm really excited about because I didn't actually know a lot about this individual, but after doing some research, I was just completely fascinated, and I can't wait to talk about this. So without further ado, very excited to introduce all of you to Ratan Tata, who sadly just recently passed away on October 9th, 2024. And the outpouring of support to his causes, his family, has just been really awe-inspiring. And so I'm very excited to talk about Ratan Tata. And so what I've discovered is Ratan Tata is more than just a businessman. He was beloved by so many people across the world, certainly from India, and finding out that he was really a humanitarian. He was a visionary. He was a symbol of humility and leadership. His journey is incredible. He inherited one of India's largest conglomerates, and he also transformed it into the global powerhouse that it is today. But what makes him stand out was not just his wealth that he created, but more so the values that he upheld as a human being. So today we're going to look at his life, his legacy, and I uncovered some lesser known facts that really truly define him as a legend. And I also found a couple of inspirational quotes, so I'm really excited to jump in, and let's get started. Ratan Tata was born on December 28, 1937, which would have made him 89 at the time of his passing. And he was born into a family that was very synonymous with business in India. Everybody in India knew the Tata family name. He belonged to the Tata family, which had already built the foundations of one of India's largest and most respected conglomerates, the Tata Group. Now, very interestingly enough, he was actually raised by his grandmother, and his parents had gotten divorced or separated. And his childhood wasn't really as smooth as you might think, especially somebody born into kind of this already well-established family. His upbringing was definitely full of challenges, but I think it instilled in him somehow this like deep empathy and resilience, which I find just absolutely fascinating and interesting, because I think these values were what really shaped his leadership and his desires to just be a compassionate human being later on in life. So after completing his education at Cornell University in the United States in architecture, he moved on to Harvard Business School. And Ratan Tata then went back to India. But instead of just jumping into a high-profile position, he chose to start at the very bottom, working on the shop floors of Tata Steel. And he once said, "I never had a long-term ambition to be a billionaire or for the Tata Group to be huge in business. I always believed we were here to serve society." And I love that quote because it's so poignant, just I think, to his character that I've discovered just in the research that I've done. What a phenomenal way to just live your life. Right? I think the money will come if you have those kind of desires and those passions, but it was never a driving force for him, at least according to, what he had said in some interviews. And I find it really interesting because Tata wasn't really a prominent figure in the media. He certainly was, a well-known figure, certainly in India, but, globally, I don't remember ever really hearing much about Ratan Tata, which is why it took me a little bit to do some research and understand who he was. So I find it really cool that this guy, this amazing person, didn't seek out the limelight. And so I think that also makes him extremely legendary. Now, a couple of interesting facts, and I'll kind of sprinkle these in throughout the episode, but one of the amazing things that I found while just perusing his social media pages and trying to uncover who he is a little bit as a human, as a person, he had a hugely deep love for animals, and especially dogs. So all you dog lovers out there, you have a kindred spirit in Ratan Tata. And it's very cool because as I was investigating a little bit more about his passing, he left behind his favorite dog. Well, I think he had a couple, but Goa was his dog that he currently has, still alive today. And there's some really cool pictures and video in the media of his casket and his dog coming up and actually laying next to the casket. And I've always found that so cool. You see that once in a while with, in the United States here when soldiers return and, they return home in their casket and they go and, lay by the casket or their graveside. So it just goes to show that I think animals have this, innate sense of life and energy. And so the fact that Goa, his dog, ended up just laying right next to his master's casket it's so powerful of an image. So if you get an opportunity, go check it out. There's certainly some videos out there of this, this happening just recently, as of yesterday, I believe. The date is October 10th. Unfortunately, Ratan Tata passed away on October 9th. And one of the other interesting things about Tata is that he provided shelter for stray dogs. So he was so passionate about stray dogs. And I believe that there are quite a few in India. I mean, certainly across the world. But he would actually take those those stray dogs and bring them into his house, into his office. He would take care of them as if they were his own. And there's even just a recent post on his Instagram of him finding a dog. It looks like a Doberman or something. And he posts out there, hey, we found this dog. It's a bit injured. It was just kind of wandering the streets, but we've taken him here with us. And then please email, with a description of the dog and, tell us a little bit more about him. And if he's yours, we'll be happy to return him. But he's in being well taken care of. He's being well fed. So just the compassion that he has for animals, I found is just amazing. And additionally, too, during the Mumbai monsoon season, stray dogs would often take refuge in the lobby of the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel, which is a Tata-owned property. And the hotel staff, at Ratan Tata's request, takes care of these dogs and feeds them. So it's just so cool that he mandates this of his employees to also show that, compassion towards human beings, but also impressing upon his employees to show compassion towards animals. And I just love that because, not only does his compassion definitely exist within business, he just genuinely cares for small creatures. And one last cool little tidbit, in fact, about his love for animals is he created a small animal veterinary clinic in India. And I can't remember one of the cities that he built this in, but just this awesome place that he's generated a whole facility, a whole place for them to just treat small animals. And not only is it, taking care of local animals, stray animals, injured animals, but also giving jobs to veterinarians and people practicing veterinary medicine. So, I mean, just the reach that he had to help not only animals but human beings as well. It just goes to show the level of his character. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't step in and talk a little bit about kind of the research that I've done on Tata Group, which I'm sure everybody in India is familiar with Tata Group. And I'm sure globally people are also familiar with it. I wasn't as much. And I think that just speaks to the level of commitment to their focus on just being about their business and not so much about the clout and the media attention that they, you would often see, big companies seeking. So, shout out to the Tata Group for just being again, about their business, right? And just focused on that. But they were involved in so many different areas of business as a giant corporation conglomerate. They had their hands in aerospace, leather products, IT, steel, electronics, real estate, automotive, retail and commerce, financial services, tourism, hospitality, airlines. I mean, incredible. Just the amount of reach that this company had was just phenomenal, and how many jobs they were able to create based on all of these different, companies that they've created out of this giant group, Tata Group. And so phenomenal. But it's fascinating to me that, when Ratan Tata became chairman in 1991, India was on the verge of kind of economic liberalization. And under his leadership, they acquired Jaguar Land Rover, they acquired Tata Tea, Tata Tea bought Tetley, and Tata Steel acquired Chorus. And so he kind of transformed them from just this, I don't want to call it small group, but into a big kind of global entity. And they weren't just business moves. They were aimed at creating value across borders and, all sectors across the globe. And so just finding out that Ratan Tata was so a big picture person, but also very dedicated to making sure that, his projects, his desires and dreams weren't just going to affect him and shareholders in the company, but people, across the entire planet. And one of his boldest projects was Tata Nano. And it was the world's most affordable car. And while the Nano did not achieve the commercial success expected, it just symbolized his vision to improve the lives of ordinary people. So he created this extremely affordable car for millions of people to, have access to purchase in India. And it wasn't just about, making a car for Ratan Tata. It was about making a difference. And he said, "None can destroy iron, but its own rust can. Likewise, none can destroy a person, but his own mindset can." And I think that's so poignant, because it's so true that it's within ourselves to kind of destroy ourselves. And I think about, imposter syndrome and that voice in the back of your mind that tells you can't do something. And his overwhelming ability to kind of overcome all of those negative thoughts and pursue the dreams and have that passion to just go forth and do it, because he had such a strong mindset, I think is really great. And I love that quote. And his leadership just extended to so many different areas, including technological advancements. He was such a champion for innovation, and he also wanted to use that to cater to kind of the global middle class and the less privileged. He saw a need to prop up the middle class and those with less, versus, most, corporations just focusing on, how much can they raise their share price and how much can they help their investors. I mean, which from a business perspective is important, but that will come with supporting the middle class. And one of the neat things that I found in my research, trying to identify and find out who Ratan Tata was as a person, I scrubbed the internet trying to find just information, which is kind of hard to do because he wasn't a prominent media figure. And so I reached out to one of my close friends. His name is Arun, and he really impressed upon me just the amount of love that people had for Ratan Tata. And it's now shown across the internet today in just all of the notes and the comments about how great of a human being he was. But my friend Arun said it really well, and he just said he was so beloved by people. And he reiterated that he wasn't a prominent media figure. He was not somebody who sought out the limelight. And while he was remembered for his business acumen, I mean, phenomenal business person, very intelligent mind for global business, but more so for just his deep sense of empathy. And once he was telling me a story, Arun, was about his personal involvement during the Mumbai terrorist attacks on the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. The Taj Mahal Palace Hotel was actually owned by Tata. And in the aftermath of this terrorist attack, Ratan Tata actually visited the families of the victims, which is not necessarily uncommon for like a political figure to do, but as the head of a global organization, he's a very business-minded person, very busy, and he ensured that everyone impacted, including the hotel staff, was supported emotionally, financially, whatever it was that they needed. He was there to support them. And he said he didn't want any press involved, no media. It was just his silent compassion that I find so just riveting. And it's certainly something that makes, Ratan Tata a 100% legend. And it's his empathy that drove his philanthropy. The Tata Group is structured so that about 66% of its holding company, Tata Sons, is owned by charitable trusts, which I think is great because they're out there supporting causes like healthcare, education, rural development. I mean, so many areas that impact, again, the middle class, the less privileged. And it was philanthropy on a massive scale. But what makes it even more impressive is that Ratan Tata's philosophy behind it. He once said, businesses need to go beyond the interest of their companies to the communities they serve, which is just such an amazing mindset to have as a leader, which I think there are leaders out there that have that mindset, but they get so stuck by the potential bureaucracy or bureaucratic red tape that involves being a global conglomerate business. But he was so driven to just make sure that his business was focusing on the communities. And I love that. I think that's amazing. And again, his philanthropy, I think, is what he will be known for the most. But it's not just the philanthropic efforts that they did as Tata Group, with their charitable trust, the contributions, the hundreds of millions, probably billions of dollars that they've injected into the global communities. But the fact that he was so silent about it. I mean, you would see articles here and there about these efforts, but it doesn't scale to the amount of money that they were investing. And so I think it's amazing that his personal contributions were just often made without any publicity. So him supporting individual families in need to just get support, to him quietly funding education programs. I mean, he was such a champion for education, and he ensured that his contributions made a real difference, and he did it without any recognition, which I think is phenomenal and such a great way to live a life. And while I was doing this research on this amazing, incredible, legendary person, I had to ask and stop myself and think, how did this man do so much when he probably had, a family, wife, kids to take care of? And then I discovered that Ratan Tata actually never was married and never had children. So that makes sense, how he's able to just really focus his energies and make so many people part of his family. But allegedly, Ratan Tata wasn't just a man who had no interest, no romantic interest. Allegedly, he was very close to marrying 4 times, but chose not to. And he once revealed in an interview that he had actually fallen in love in the U.S. during his time studying at Cornell. However, due to his grandmother's illness back in India, he had to return. And so I'm assuming he just didn't want to do a long-distance relationship or things didn't work out. But what's more impactful is that his decision reflected his sense of responsibility and just dedication to his family. And another interesting fact that I thought, okay, if he's not married, if he doesn't have children, then he must have been approached to go into politics because he's got all of this time and energy and bandwidth and so many great ideas. He had to have been tapped to go into politics, but according to numerous sources that I've looked into, he never went into politics and he always declined. I think he believed in contributing to society from outside the political arena, using his business as a means to create social change. And he once said, "I'm not cut out for politics. I don't have the temperament to be a politician." And I think that that's amazing because he was, a man enough to admit that he wasn't able to be a politician. But I think that also benefited him in so many ways because it kind of reflected on his humility to be honest and authentic, but also, his deeper sense of responsibility towards society, animals, and people. And he also said, "I don't believe in taking right decisions. I take decisions and then make them right." And I think that that's very, very profound for someone to say, because for him to have such a strong moral compass, just speaks to his deep character as a human being. And I love that. And that, again, I can't stress enough how thrilled I am to be able to talk about such an amazing, amazing person. And when I think about reflecting on his life and what I've researched and found out about him, you think what I've talked about thus far, he, was such a giant figure in the global economy, in India's economy. You have to imagine that this guy was just sitting in the boardroom, sitting behind his desk, just tirelessly working away. But he actually had a really fun spirit about him as well. And he had a massive passion for cars. And so, he has his own personal private collection of cars, which I think is awesome. But he was really the driving force behind Tata Motors. And he was so instrumental in, again, making affordable cars available to, the entire India population, and discovering that, in order to take care of India's economy, they needed to build from within. And so this desire, this passion to, create this industry rather than importing vehicles, he said, hey, we can do this ourselves, which created, hundreds of thousands of jobs for people, probably millions. And also just that he was so passionate about cars. And one of the most interesting things that I found as I was doing some research is that, yes, he had a really good car collection, Ferraris, Mercedes. But the coolest thing is that Ratan Tata's daily driver was just a white sedan, a Honda Civic, that he would drive around the streets of Mumbai. And I think that's amazing because it's just, Ratan Tata could afford any car he wanted to buy, and he chose to drive around in a Honda Civic. Just makes him even more of a legend. It just goes to show that he had such a spirit for life. And the last little nugget of maybe lesser known information was that, and this is probably the coolest thing that I found out about him, amazing things about this man, but he was the first Indian to fly the F-16 Falcon fighter jet. And he did it at the age of 69. What? How cool was this man's life, honestly? He was a trained pilot, and he said flying was one of his biggest passions. And so he also would even pilot Tata Group's own private jets. And then nearly a decade after he first flew that F-16, I think it was back in 2007, Tata signed a groundbreaking agreement with Lockheed Martin to produce the F-16 Block 70 in India. So that partnership not only supported thousands of jobs, again, in India and in the U.S., it just also placed India at the heart of the global fighter aircraft supply chain. The mindset on this man, he's just like, I love cars, I'm going to start building cars. I love fighter jets, how can I make fighter jets in India? I mean, Ratan Tata was an extremely savvy business person, but also wicked cool. Like, what an amazing individual. Like, he was kind of like a real life Tony Stark from the Avengers, only certainly much more humble and just more passionate about people. And I truly think that that's why so many people revered him as just a beloved human being. And so before we close out this episode, I did want to share a few inspirational quotes and lessons from Ratan Tata. Throughout his career, he shared many insights that inspired millions of people around the world. And so wanted to share a few quotes that I think really, truly capture his spirit. He was once quoted as saying, "Ups and downs in life are very important to keep us going, because a straight line in an ECG means we are not alive." And I think that's amazing because it really reflects his belief in resilience and learning from failures and understanding that life is going to have its ups and downs and we need to embrace those. He was also quoted as saying, "I admire people who are very successful, but if that success has been achieved through too much ruthlessness, then I may admire that person, but I can't respect him." And that just talks to Tata's belief in just ethical leadership and what makes him such a humble leader and somebody who just had the strongest moral compass you can imagine. And then the last quote, he said, "Take the stones people throw at you and use them to build a monument." And I think that's a powerful reminder to use adversity as a tool for growth. Ratan Tata's story is a powerful reminder that true success is not measured by wealth or status, but the impact we leave on the world. His leadership style was one that blended ambition with ethics, innovation with compassion, and business with humanity. Whether it was transforming Tata Group into a global conglomerate or making a difference in everyday people's lives. Now, as we wrap up this episode, let's remember the lessons that we can learn from Ratan Tata. Stay humble, remain compassionate, and always strive to make a positive impact, no matter how big or small. And now I'd like to thank everyone for listening to this podcast. My deepest condolences and sympathies to the families and friends of Ratan Tata, the entire country of India, and frankly, the world. We lost one of the greats yesterday. And until next time, keep finding the extraordinary in the everyday. And as always, stay legendary.